Hello, and welcome back to a long-awaited episode of Behind the Shield. I'm your host, James David. It has been quite a while since I've done a video on YouTube, and I've been a bit busy with work. I've been working 2 different jobs, and trying to work out what I should be doing for my channel and my content, and I got a good recommendation from a friend of mine. So, as much as I love to promote my comics and talk about my work and what I'm doing, and how it's going, I also want to talk more about my inspiration. So what made me want to write a fantasy-based comic series, how I came up with the characters, and as well as how I kind of came to the idea of creating a fantasy-based comic book series. So I get tongue-tied. I thought I could use this channel as a way to talk about my work, my inspiration, and a lot of my own ideas. So I think I'll begin this video by talking about what I mainly wanted to get by writing Tales of Statendor and how I came to creating the world of Statendor. So the first big question I'm probably going to get from a lot of people is about the audio series. Originally, I was doing a Tales of Statendor audio series on my YouTube channel. That's still going to happen, but it's going to happen kind of... something in my eye. Something kind of in the long term. I'm still kind of working on content for that, so that will eventually happen. I just have to properly write it all out and then narrate it and record it. So yeah, that's in the works still, but just on a very slow pace. I've kind of focused myself on my comics and redoubled my efforts on producing more of the comic book pages. By the time of this video now, I am halfway through issue number 2. I try and produce 1 page every few weeks, and then I put it on my Patreon, which the link to in this video is just at the bottom of the page. So if you want to follow us on Patreon, you can, and then you can see the in progress kind of sketches of the comic book. The comic is drawn by my artist Alvarex, and he's a really good artist. So if anybody wants to check him out, I'll do a link to his page and website as well, so you can see all the other artwork he does. And I mean, before talking about my comic, I think I should probably go back to the beginning and like the very, very beginning of how Tales of Statendor essentially got started. And that is quite not a difficult story to tell, but it feels so long ago, but it's only been like 2 years since I kind of started this journey. I originally was working at the Opera House, the London Opera House the Royal Opera House in London, and I was an usher. But then COVID happened, so we all had to go into lockdown. And this was kind of a time where I was on furlough and I was still getting paid to just stay at home. But I needed some sort of creative outlet to help me get through the lockdown. This kind of varied on normal like story writing and playing a couple of video games, but I also wanted to do something like really serious. I remember reading somewhere that Shakespeare did Hamlet he wrote Hamlet during lockdown, during the lockdown he went through when the Black Plague was going through London. So I want to get some of that sort of... I wanted to use that kind of moment. Sorry, I'm getting all tongue-tied talking about this. But I wanted to have the opportunity where I was under kind of house arrest for a year or so, where I wanted to be able to show something which I had produced during that time. A lot of people started listening to audiobooks. We saw a lot more interest in streaming services. I know Games Workshop, the guys who do the Warhammer little figures, their sales went up like 300% during the lockdown. So I wanted to try and capitalize on that opportunity where I would be able to work from home. I started my Patreon for my comic, and that's helped sort of subsidize the creation of the pages. And I also realized, like, what kind of comic did I want to create? Originally I wanted to do a superhero one. I had this idea for a superhero, but kind of seeing Marvel and DC comics, TV shows, and all that stuff, I realized that I would be competing with giants, and I really wanted to stand out. So I didn't want to be in the shadow of these giants, and instead I realized I wanted to do something which there wasn't really a lot of. And looking at other comics online, I realized that there weren't too many ongoing fantasy comics. When I was younger, I used to play a lot of Dungeons and Dragons. This was kind of not a staple of my childhood, but when I was a teenager, I was getting into it more. I used to play it in school, and it's when I realized that, I can do a fantasy comic, because I found like a few mini-series and one-shots of fantasy comics, and now they're doing a DC kind of series where it's other superheroes in a fantasy world. Personally, I'm not a big fan of that, but that's neither here nor there. I kind of wanted to do something which was truly my own, and then I decided, you know what, I'm going to try and do a Tales of Statendor comic series. Well, I didn't call it Tales of Statendor at first. I really struggled in trying to find a name. The naming process kind of took a month or so, mostly because it wasn't just coming up with a name, it was coming up with a name where the moment you kind of you read it, you could essentially you could say it without knowing what the word originally was. A great way to test this was with my dad, who isn't really kind of into fantasy work, and I decided, you know what, I'm going to test it on him, and I would write these names on like a notepad, and I would show them to him, and I'd ask him, how do you pronounce this and that? And I finally was able to come up with a proper name, thanks to his help regarding the pronunciations, and I'm pretty happy with how it turned out. So during that time, I was able to work hard. I wrote the script, I rewrote it, I edited it, I then produced it on like a weekly basis, and eventually I was able to produce the first issue of Tales of Statendor. I'm really proud of how it turned out. My artist Alvarex does great artwork, so if anybody wants to check that out, the link for the Patreon and the Etsy are just at the bottom of the video, so go have a look at that. And yeah, I'm really proud I was able to make the first comic, and ideally I wanted to make it a long-term ongoing comic book. I mean, if it ever reaches issue number 10, I'm going to be over the moon, but I really do hope it becomes something. I always had this idea for fantasy stories and adventures, but I wasn't quite sure how, because getting it from here onto like a page and finding people who would be interested in it was always not like a chore, but was like always, it sounds really daunting, because before all of this began, it was just an idea I had scribbled on a little notepad, and now it's an actual comic, and I'm halfway through the second issue. I mean, I've written a few of the comic scripts, but it's going to take time to produce and whatnot. So yeah, finding some supporters already and people who actually like it is really, it's incredible, because I still can't believe it's only been 2 years, and I've already sent a few physical copies to a few people, and they reviewed it, and it was really cool to see something which I only made 2 years ago being reviewed by other people. One of the TikTokers who reviewed my comic, Woody Strikes Back, I'll send a link to his page at the bottom of this video, so you guys can all check that out. He's got a really cool profile. I wasn't really... Sorry, when it came to the writing aspect of it, I had these ideas for storylines, but I also realized that I had to make it different. I had to make it stand out. So how could I make it stand out? I already decided right away that I would have a group of characters to start with. But whether or not they'd actually stick around and be the main focus of the comics was a big source of uncertainty for me. I like the idea of different characters having different issues and different storylines in different places in the world of Statendor, but I also wanted to showcase how diverse the world is. not just with the people in it, but also like the terrain and the environments. So I thought of an idea where I'd focus on one group of characters, and then after a certain amount of time, I would jump to a new group of characters. Mostly so that I could keep the dynamic of the comics going, but also, well, this one kind of came a bit later on when I spoke to a few other people. They said that they would, if they wanted to see a switch of characters, they always wanted to see the sort of the after effects that one group made with their choices throughout the course of their adventures. So maybe we might see more of that in the future, like Tales of Stadendor, but it's early days still. But I've taken that into account. I'm also looking into doing graphic novels, so that's going to be a whole thing. The graphic novels will probably be really far down the line, so in the meantime, don't be holding your breath for any of those. And yeah, I think that in the long run, I don't know where Tales of Stadendor is going or what it's going to be, but I'm really proud that I got this going. Even though it's sort of an unknown comic at the moment, I am glad that I started it, and I want to keep it going and make it my full-time career. After the pandemic ended, I moved out of London. I went down to the south coast, and the south coast of England, for anyone who doesn't know about that. And I live with my dad now, and he's good, and he's got some mobility issues, but I'm also trying to find myself out here. Now that I've moved out of the big city to a small town, I noticed that there was a lot of changes, like the people were friendlier, and that was coming from a massive sprawling metropolis. It was not something I was totally prepared for, but I think I'm kind of opening up now. But my mental health improved a lot. Even like the environment and a lot of the scenery has like really improved my mood. I've started going on hikes more, and this also gave me an insight into traveling, like hiking and going on adventures myself. So that was quite interesting. Obviously, I'm not going to encounter any dragons or goblins or random encounters. Well, actually, random encounters, that's another story, which I'll probably save for another video. But these sort of hikes kind of reminded me of the D&D adventures I used to have in school, where we travel from town to town, solving mysteries and fighting monsters and whatnot. But it also gave me ideas for how the world of Stadendor would look, and like the distances between towns and villages and everything in between. Because I've played D&D, and I've also played a few games in the Forgotten Realms. The idea that there are all these towns and cities and then sort of wilderness and nothing's claimed in between, I didn't mind it, but when I also love history, and looking back at history in feudal Europe, I don't know, I guess I wanted to see a bit more conflict in some games. So I always, whenever time I do like my old D&D games, I was the dungeon master. I would weave like political and social issues into the game, and I still do that now. I've moved down here and I've started a group online, and we play together every other week or so, and they've been really cool, and a lot of them were new players, so I was able to introduce them to D&D, and seeing that love of creativity in creating characters also inspired me more in my comics. So I was able to really invest my interest back into my writing. And that was just such a... Sorry, that was my watch. That was such a big moment for me, because I've never really been good at sharing my every time. That was my other watch, which I still need to fix. I've never really been good at like sharing and promoting myself. I'm a massive introvert, and because of that, like even talking about myself in a positive way, I kind of get all tense about it. I can't be the only one, but this has sort of been a great way to sort of help me with that. And I'm sort of building up the confidence to go to Comic-Con and start promoting my comics. But Another thing I need to do is produce more content to promote. So Comic-Con is probably closer around the corner than the graphic novels. But yeah, I'm looking forward to making more of my series and kind of doing more of my YouTube videos. I wanted to use these videos as a way to talk about my work, who I am, what I'm trying to do with my stories, the inspiration for my characters, as well as talk about themes in fantasy and storytelling in general, and also kind of give my opinion about them, because I don't know if it matters or if anyone is interested, but I guess I want the opportunity to share my work and who I am, as well as talk about my comics. So, what to expect for Tales of Stadendor? Well, the most obvious one being is that since it's an ongoing comic book series, there's going to be more stories and content to be coming in the future. Aside from comic content wise, I'm going to try and do more of the audio series, as well as a few audio short stories, and I'm even looking into doing an audio play, but like I said, this is all further down the line. I'm writing a few articles, and yeah, I'm definitely gonna try and do more of these YouTube videos, just so that I can get my content out there, talk to you guys a bit more, and tell you a bit more about the man behind the writing. Other than that, yeah, I'd say keep your eye out for the Tales of Stadendor sort of comics. I put the first one up on Webtoon, which will also be at the bottom of this video, so you can check that out. I'm thinking of doing a few one-off comics, so like comic panels where it's just like self-contained stories, but once again, that's a big if. I'm working on what to do, because originally my idea for Tales of Stadendor, it's a comic book series, but it's like a shared world, so all these different characters will cross paths eventually and having their own major storylines and issues to deal with. So if you can hear noisy stuff happening outside, I'm near a main road, and I'm looking right out my window to that main road. So once again, do apologize for the noise. And yeah, that's going to be my main focus for the next couple of weeks or so. I think that's a good way. Sorry about that. A good way of moving forward. I can schedule my work, publish it, and then I can promote it even more and talk more about my thoughts and feelings of my writing and my ideas to you guys on my channel. So if you guys also have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments, and I will definitely get back to you on all of that. So there's like a pub next door, and they've got like a garden. Occasionally I get to look out and see all the fights and stuff like that happening out there. But other than that, yeah, I hope you guys have enjoyed this video, and do check us out on our websites, follow the links, and check out the other sites down below. And I hope to see you next time on another episode of Behind the Shield.